Could you get Rita's, there you go.
Hey, it's not letting me.
Yeah, it's not working. Let me see. Is it too long? How you doing? How are you? Take care.
Roberta? Okay.
I'm trying. We're working on it.
Let's see, Roberta?
They working.
Okay. Who are we missing? Rod? He's still trying? And Ms. Scott?
My battery was in back.
Let's do this, if it's okay. Go ahead and show Chairwoman Scott in attendance. There we go.
Okay.
All right. We have a quorum. First item of the agenda is the approval of the prior meeting minutes. Could I get a motion and a second for the approval?
I move to approve.
Okay. Hardy moved for approval. Roberta seconds. Let's call the question. Could everybody vote, please? And Jim, I'll let you. Gotcha. Can you vote?
I can't, but
Okay. Show Mr. Durrett is voting yes and in attendance. All right. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of systems engineering services, REI AE 46193 by Larry Prescott. Larry?
Good morning, Chairman Pond, committee members, Mr. Parker. Before you today is the resolution authorizing the award of contract for the procurement of the system engineering services, REI AE 46193. Next slide, please. So this program is a continuation of the previous program that was started back in 2016, which expires this December. So I presented back in to the committee to solicit this procurement, and in June of this year, we received 9 proposals. The source evaluation committee reviewed them, scored them, and then we interviewed 4 different shortlisted firms. Next slide, please. So in order to support this transit system state of good repair program and the future expansion, this program is set up for these on-call services as an extension of our current staff and with the ability to bring in subject matter experts. As you can see, we've got a very technical, specific variety of scopes within this program. Also, beyond this, for projects that extend beyond the contract terms of this contract, we still have the ability to contract and procure outside of this program as needed. Next slide, please. So the proposed program is our standard base term, 3 years for $6 million, and 2 one-year options at $2 million each. So the total $10 million will be distributed through our capital improvement program budgets dispersed over the next 5 years on an annual basis. Next slide, please. So the Source Evaluation Committee recommends HNTB Corporation and WSP Inc. USA for these 2 contracts. As you can see, underneath each one of these major logos are all of the sub-consultants for each team, and we've highlighted the DBEs. Some are legacy and some are new for us, so we've got a very good variety supporting this program. And both firms have committed to meet or exceed our 31% DBE requirements for this contract. Next slide. So with that, I'd like to request approval of this requisition, authorizing the award of contract with these 2 firms, HNTB Corporation and WSP USA, for the REI AE 46193, please. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay. Before there are any questions, can I get a motion and a second, please?
move to approve.
Floyd moves.
I can second.
Second, Hartage. All right, any questions for Larry? Must be very thorough, Larry. I do have one
Yes, sir.
question. It's more of a clarification for the group. This money isn't necessarily spent. Basically, these are contracts set up on an hourly basis with a not to exceed. So
Correct.
you
On
spend
call.
that as it's needed, but they're already set up with hourly rates approved, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, sir, Bill.
Mr. Chairman, quick question. You might elaborate a little bit about how the minority firms are going to be included in this. Who makes the choice of that and how it's... That's done on a daily basis?
So they're all pre-approved to start with.
Right.
And when they submit their scoping, they have to break down the scoping per their internal percentages as well as their DBE percentages. So each DBE has a specialized area of expertise within the contracts. So the prime firms don't do all of the all of the work themselves. And so when we negotiate each work order that we put out, we do a negotiation with that percentage and do a monthly and annual update on what their percentage is for use of those DBEs.
Okay, you said monthly update, so you're looking then
the-
to keep up with whether we're making the 31%
Yes, sir. When
on
we
a
do the-
monthly basis,
When
but,
we do the invoicing, the PMs keep track of that as part of our program.
okay, do you get approval of who the minorities are being used? Does MARTA get approval of that? Or is that based, do the primes get approval of that? Or,
They're part of the team, and they're already approved when we selected them. So they were pre-approved DBEs as part of this team, and when we reviewed them and selected them,
okay, but they're not on every time you use HNTB, they're not going to use all of these minorities. right?
correct.
They're going to pick one for that particular reason of that.
Yes, sir.
Does MARTA get a choice of that, or does that prime make that decision about who they choose to use?
The prime uses the selected
From this
discipline
selected
specific.
list, I
The
understand that,
selected
but
list, yes.
how do they pick, who gets the choice, or does MARTA get a veto authority, or,
We always have that ability. It is our contract at the end of the
Okay.
day, so yes, sir.
all right. I guess that's the point I was trying to make.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Any other questions for Larry? If not, let's call the question. Could everyone vote, please?
Chair, I'm late, so I'm not on the list.
We've got you. And I think we're going to show Floyd and Dewart as voting for approval. Okay, the motion passes. Let's go to the next item is Jonathan Hunt. It's a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for procurement, procurement of on-call claims analysis, RFP P47040 by Jonathan Hunt.
Good morning, Committee Chair Pond, members of the board, and General Manager Parker. I'm here requesting the committee's recommendation for full board approval to allow the authority to enter a contract for RFP P47040, for on-call claims analysis services. As the authority is undergoing significant upgrades to its infrastructure as part of several tax initiatives for expansion and state of good repair projects, inevitably, with any large capital project program, there will be occasions where the owner, MARTA, and the contractors are not in full agreement. Regarding the project, as such, the Department of Legal Services, along with the support of the capital programs and delivery, is requesting the services of two third-party claims analysis firms. In March of this year, MARTA advertised this RFP in accordance with the MARTA Act and MARTA's procurement procedures. 73 entities downloaded the solicitation, and we received four proposals, all of which were deemed responsive. Those proposals came from Arcadis, JCMS, Rhodes Group, and RK&K. After shortlisting three firms, the authority's Source Evaluation Committee reviewed and evaluated the proposals, recommended that the authority accept proposals from Arcadis and JCMS. The Department of Diversity and Inclusion set a 13% goal for the DBE participation on this project, and I'm happy to report that both recommended firms have met the goal and have selected firms to partner with. Arcadis selected Rotafox, an Atlanta-based firm, and JCMS selected SQN Associates, a Chicago-based DBE firm. The award requested is for a 3-year contract with one option to extend the term for 1 year. Both firms, for both firms, in the total aggregate amount of $2 million. We selected 2 firms to allow the authority to eliminate any potential conflicts that may arise in the review of the potential claims. And with that, I will take any questions from the committee, Chair Pond.
Could I get a motion and a second before?
I'll move approval. I'll second.
Okay, Durrett moved for approval. I didn't catch the second.
Frierson.
All right, let's have David Salon. All right, questions for,
I have a question, a couple questions. So how's this service used? So if there's not a claim, and I know it's not possible, but, but if there's not one, then that means that these services are not used at all. Is that fair?
Correct. In a perfect world, we wouldn't need to use these services at all.
Okay.
But in reality, there are claims, and there will often be disputes that need quick, rapid analysis.
All right.
So that we can resolve those claims during the course of the project and more rapidly versus allowing them to build up or resolving them at the end of the project.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
So they're done at the time when
Right.
there's a problem, and they're brought in. And are
Absolutely.
their services paid hourly?
Yes.
They are?
Yes.
Okay, so they only use when that happens. Okay, thank you. All right.
okay. Any other questions for Mr. Hunt? With that, I'll call the question. Sure, Mr.
Trying to learn how to push buttons and talk at the same
That's all right.
time, and I'm having trouble doing
Roberto's,
that.
Reed will show you.
Well, I think you might elaborate a little bit about the timing on when you include these people, because a lot of times there's discussion going on that you don't know it's going to lead to a claim at some point in time. And then the contractor or whoever you're dealing with may have hired a firm to prepare a claim for them at some point in time. So how do you make the decision on when you engage these people and when you think, no, there's no need for this right now?
A lot of the claims are smaller claims and can be resolved by, frankly, our project management staff out of capital programs and delivery and the involvement of legal services and/or procurement. But as the claims arise and the value of those claims or potential claims arise, that would be a joint decision between the project manager and legal services. I'm happy to report that capital programs and delivery and legal services work very closely together on all of our ongoing capital programs projects. So it's hard to say with a definitive or objective time point. We need to bring in analysis. It may be staffing. It may be that we need additional support because our in-house estimators are overloaded at the time. So any number of factors could have us go to our outside third-party claims analysis.
Okay, Jonathan, is there a particular time you call it a claim, or does the contractor have to say, or the individual have to say, I'm claiming, we're in disagreement and I'm filing a claim?
Yep, that's why I use claims or disputes.
Okay.
There is a process within our construction contract documents where they have to actually say, this is a claim, and it starts a clock of back and forth responses to help drive resolution. But there are disputes that our project managers will know, hey, this is coming down the pipe. I've heard them complaining about it in our weekly project management meetings. I think this is going to result in a claim. Let's jump on it.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
Any other questions for Mr. Hunt?
I have a question, Mr. Hunt.
That will call the question. Could everyone, oh, sure. Ms. Abdul-Salam.
Sorry, thank you. Mr. Hunt, do you have any information about the average number of claims we might have to service per year or per month, or however you keep it?
I don't have average numbers. Thankfully, and knock on wood, right now the number of claims are pretty low.
Okay.
But our program is going to grow exponentially over the next 2 to 5 years. So we're trying to be ahead of the curve.
Thank you.
This is more of costs, that sort of thing, cost of construction, cost of changes, time, overhead, and all of that. It's more of a technical analysis support, correct?
Absolutely.
Yes, okay. Let's call the question. Could everyone please vote? And I think you will show Dewart and Floyd as a yes. Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for disposal of land parcel D3050-3344 Valley Road Northeast, IFB B48262 by Robin Boyd. Robin?
Good morning, Chairman Pond. I don't know if this is on Mayor Floyd, Mr. Parker, or members of the committee. This resolution is for us to award to the high bidder for the sale of 3344 Oak Valley Road and to execute the sales and purchase agreement. And if you can see, well, you can go to the next slide, I believe. So this was the parcel that was across the street from the Lennox station. And that, if you can see the white, which is the parking deck, and the building that comes out like an L to the left, that owner has been assembling the entire corner since Houston's closed. And I think they have one more parcel after ours. But we did if you could go to the next slide. The parcel is no longer needed. We do have a signed lease on there where we bring in $13,200 a month, but that can be terminated. And when we put this out for bid, we did get the appraisal, and the appraised value as an assembled parcel was $481,000, and that was we received one bid, and that was the bid we received. There is federal interest, so we already have, or are getting the FTA approval. And if you could go to the next slide. So again, asking for approval to award that contract and execute the purchase and sale agreement.
Okay, could we have a motion and a second?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Dewart, second by Floyd. All right, questions from Ms. Boyd?
Yeah, that was $13,000 in current income per year.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Any other questions, discussion? With that, we'll call the question. Could everyone please vote? And we had a yes from Floyd and Mr. Dewart again, so the motion passes.
Thank you.
The last item is a briefing for the Clayton County High Capacity Transit Update by Jen Ranu. Jen?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, board members. Recently, we've been conducting briefings on this project. So it's the Clayton County High Capacity Transit Corridor. It's one of the project studies that we've committed to in the 15th Amendment. And with the briefings and key findings that we've been doing, we want to share that with the board today and also provide an overview of the next steps that we're going to undertake and get any feedback from you. So with the chair's permission, I'd like to invite Mr. Grady Smith to the podium where he's standing now to provide the presentation.
Good morning, Chairman Pond, fellow committee members, CEO Parker. I've had the opportunity to work with the Clayton delegation and folks since 2014. So this briefing is a very key time in the evolution of the program in Clayton County. Next slide. So this morning I'm going to give you a general overview of the total program. I'm also going to spend the majority of the presentation focusing in on the commuter rail project, its impacts, its cost, its potential competitiveness within the Federal Transit Administration's capital grants program, and then talk a little bit about next steps. Next slide, please. So this slide kind of captures everything that's going on in Clayton. Quite a massive program. There's been a vision plan developed, a system plan that I'll talk a little bit about. There's also a pretty interesting initiative bringing together the local governments who control land use and zoning with MARTA to look real closely at their development codes and transit supportive land use opportunities and improving those codes. Of course, there's a $158 million bus operations and maintenance facility moving through the delivery process. There's also the commuter rail project that, again, I'll talk a little bit about. And then there's the Riverdale Bus Rapid Transit project that's quickly moving through project delivery as well, with a delivery date focused for 2026. Next slide. This slide captures the amendment to the Rapid Contract and Assistance Agreement, the 15th Amendment, and identifies the commitments that MARTA has made to Clayton County. And as you can see across the top, there are a number of initiatives, all the way from improving amenities and stops throughout the system to the continued rollout of the bus services, with recently bus routes 197 and 198 coming online. The commuter rail project, as I mentioned, the rapid transit, bus rapid transit investment on the west side of the county, but also a new park and ride facility and mobility hub at the Justice Center, which is now currently in operation as a quick build, but we're looking to fully build that facility out. The key to this slide is really everything is on the way, everything is on schedule. However, we do have some issues with the commuter rail that I'll talk about. Next slide, please. So the system plan, again, is a vision plan for the county. And this is a planning process that's ongoing in a number of counties in Metro Atlanta. Fulton County has completed theirs. Cobb is in the process of developing their transit master plan. DeKalb has completed one, Gwinnett as well. MARTA took the initiative early on to complete a very similar initiative for Clayton County. This plan is a 30-year vision, and as you can see, geographically, it covers the entirety of the county. But more importantly, it also includes a layer of transit options and services, everything from high-capacity transit to arterial rapid transit along many of the major arterials in the county, extensive local bus network, but also nodal opportunities at park and rides, mobility hubs, and other opportunities to support economic development and transit-oriented development across the county. So this is the vision that MARTA is really focused on delivering over the next 30 years. It's a process that the ATL requires in delivering that information to them as they develop a master plan for the entire Atlanta region. Next slide. I mentioned the Clayton County Transit Supportive Land Use, and this initiative is extremely important as we look to make strategic transit investments across Clayton County. The local jurisdictions, the cities as well as the county, partnered with MARTA to really open up their codes, their development codes, their zoning regulations, their economic development incentives, to take a look at what's transit supportive and what's not. And so MARTA has been working with those local governments to identify those things so that they can codify and update their codes in line with things that are more transit supportive. Much of the code review identified that everything is auto-centric. The parking requirements, the setbacks, the development regulations were really auto-centric. So this gives the local governments some new information to help them to begin to update those codes and zoning regulations to support transit, to make provisions for walkability, for mixed use, lower those parking standards, make it people-friendly design that's more supportive, again, of transit investments. That's a big part of what the federal government looks at when they're looking at capital grant approvals. And so if we can work with those locals to get that to happen, that's going to really help the projects as we advance those through delivery. Next slide. The operation and maintenance facility is on its way through the delivery process as well. And as you can see here, as this board is well aware of, committee is well aware of, it's more than just an O&M facility. It will include administrative and training facilities, a police precinct, but really designed to accommodate up to 250 buses and 31 regional bus routes. Next slide. Next slide, please. Here's the delivery schedule, and I'm proud to report that the agency is on schedule. We're in the yellow phase here with the real estate acquisition moving forward. We'll move into final design and construction with a delivery date of 2026. One of the important things that we've heard from the county is that they see this facility as a conduit for job creation, workforce opportunities across the county, So that's an important, in addition to the facility coming online, ensuring that some new opportunities for county residents to take advantage, job opportunities is a big part of the workforce opportunities associated with this facility. Next slide. In addition to the $158 million O&M facility, the agency is also advancing a bus rapid transit investment on the western side of the county. And the map here kind of illustrates the connections that this new BRT would make, but it would start at the College Park MARTA station, service the Riverdale area, and then tie into the South Lake Mall on the eastern side of the county. The design process, the concept development is best-in-class BRT. That's been a point that the constituents in Clayton County has wanted to make very clear, that the BRT needs to be rail-like. It needs to emulate rail service. Important to the constituents in Clayton is the ability to take advantage of the stations for transit-oriented development and economic development. As you can see, this project potentially will perform really well as it relates to the Federal Transit Administration's process for capital grants. It's forecasted to carry about 7,200 folks daily at a cost of roughly $300 million in capital costs, about $77 million in operations and maintenance costs. We believe this project will perform well. The area that it serves is highly transit reliant. If you look at the bus routes that are up and down State Route 85, the articulated buses, pre-pandemic, those buses were packed. Some of the highest ridership in the MARTA system is along this spine of Clayton County. Next slide. So to the commuter rail. So as envisioned, the commuter rail would start there at the East Point MARTA station and utilize the Norfolk Southern Railroad corridor down to Lovejoy. This project was included in the 14th Amendment when Clayton County joined MARTA by referendum. It's roughly, again, 22 miles, about 7 stations, mainly serving the historic downtowns that the railroad was designed to serve from the beginning. One of the keys to the success of the project initially was that the system would operate on the Norfolk Southern track. And so the history of this project goes well beyond MARTA. The Georgia Department of Transportation, GDOT, looked at intercity passenger rail back in the early 2000s, which was really more about moving folks from Macon to Atlanta along this corridor. No stops in Clayton County. It was truly about intercity passenger rail connections between Macon and Atlanta. So at that time, as we progressed to the referendum in 2014, when we looked at this corridor, when MARTA looked at the corridor, the opportunity to leverage all the work that GDOT had done was a big part of why commuter rail was included in the 14th Amendment. Next slide. Since that time, the agency has had a significant amount of communication with Norfolk Southern. That communication started back in 2017. And at that point, Norfolk Southern made it clear that they weren't interested in supporting a shared track option. The shared track option is basically where you would have temporal separation, time separation between the operations along the track. So at certain times of the day, you would have, or nighttime, you'd have your freight operations. And during the peak hours of the morning and afternoon, you would have your commuter rail operations and or your intercity passenger rail operations. So that was the initial thinking behind the project along this Norfolk Southern corridor. Again, since that time, the railroad has made it very clear that a shared track option is not what they would support. However, they would support the implementation of an exclusive system for MARTA within their right-of-way. Next slide. So what would that exclusive system look like? This slide sort of illustrates some key points associated with the exclusive system. One of the keys, though, is the 26-foot separation between their system and the system that MARTA would build. That brings forth a number of impacts associated with right-of-way and other operational impacts as well. Next slide. This slide captures some of the right-of-way impacts associated with that exclusive track operation and that 26-foot separation. As you can see, there's roughly 300 parcels that could be potentially impacted. Now, we haven't done the detail to know if it's a full taking or partial taking, but we do know that roughly 296 parcels, roughly 300 parcels, would have some impact. The map to the right of the slide, my right of the slide, the green indicates the rail line, the gray indicates those associated parcels, and then the red kind of highlights some of those potential parcels that would be impacted or affected. Next slide. Just to give the committee an example of some of those impacts. This is downtown Jonesboro. As you can see, the historic Clayton County courthouse there. Main Street, Jonesboro. The track down the middle there, it's a single track, Norfolk Southern in this case. But there's a significant amount of historic properties in this location. And just down the way, there's a cemetery, an old Confederate cemetery, by the way. Next slide. So as we look to, again, have that 26-foot separation and implement a exclusive MARTA system within the corridor, it requires some relocation of McDonough Street as an example. And you can see in red at the top of the slide some potential impacts to existing buildings that would potentially need to be removed. In fact, one of those buildings is likely historic, which would therefore require some mitigation as well. And the team has looked at the entire corridor in this nature, and so we have exhibits very similar to this for every single downtown, for Jonesboro, Morrow, Lake City, all of the cities along the corridor. We've done this level of detailed analysis. Next slide. So in a nutshell, as I said, about 296 parcels impacted. And at the bottom of this slide, as I talked about historic properties, cemeteries, those environmentally sensitive areas along this corridor, could potentially trigger a higher level of environmental clearance, which could take time, money, and even more effort in terms of mitigation. We are talking about potential displacements, condemnation, realignments of roadways, pretty significant impacts. Next slide. Which leads to pretty significant cost. And so this slide summarizes, the table here summarizes the estimated capital construction cost of roughly $1.7 to $2.3 billion. The initial estimate back in 2014 for this system was $400 million. And again, the thinking back then was a shared track option with sidings and other improvements to make the system work. Because of the nature of an exclusive operation, the cost and impacts have increased. But more importantly, another key point on this slide is the ridership. And you can see here that we're talking about 23 or 2,400 riders a day if we're operating a peak hour service like most commuter rail operations in the country. And even if we operated the system on a little bit more frequency across the day, we look at a ridership about 7,000. Bottom line on this slide is the total cost per rider is significant. The 2390 as a point, we're carrying a little bit more than that on the pre-pandemic on the route that services State Route 85 in Clayton County today. These estimates are forecast ridership out to 2030. Next slide.
Hey, Grady, we're going to pause right here for a moment just to give the board committee an opportunity to ask any questions, and then we'll continue with the presentation.
Any questions? I would have thought
I guess the,
Ms. Abdul Salam would have lots of questions, but maybe not.
I guess I've just got a comment, Al. Clearly, when you're working with Norfolk Southern or any rail company, the no answer is loud and pretty significant and close to impossible to overcome. So that's why we have to go with a separated, independent guideway, right?
That's correct,
All right.
Jim.
That's a shame.
And we all know that, back in 2014, when we initially looked at the corridor, that e-commerce, freight operations, logistics were a lot different than they are today. We get Amazon groceries delivered to our door today, right? So freight and logistics and the need for moving goods around our country is totally different than it was back then. So can't speak for the railroad, but I suspect that may be a part of why they want to reserve their rights of way or their track.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Smith. Are there other transportation systems that use a shared line like we're talking about trying to present with this project? And I mean, they face the same challenges too, right? Why would their freight companies want to give up their line for this type of public transit system? I mean, are there other cities that have made that decision?
Yes, sir, Ms. Pearson, there are, and a lot of those systems were negotiated prior to the e-commerce boom, right? So
Right.
one that comes to mind is the Orlando system, right? The Sunrail system, which they negotiated with the railroads early, but prior to things changing, and were able to come to agreement in the case, and had some trade-offs that they did with the CXX at that point. So there are other systems that operate temporarily on freight railroads, but many of them negotiated their agreements many years ago.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr.
Any
Chair,
other?
Mr. Chair, I have a
Yes.
question.
Yes, Chairwoman Scott.
Was there a particular reason or explanation? I've heard the no, but was there a detailed no?
I've had a few conversations directly with the railroad around this, and it's just simply that they want to protect the capacity of their railroad, and that they don't want to do anything that will harm their future capacity of the corridor. They want to be able to have the ability. Right now, they have a one-track operation through Clayton County, although their corridor allows them to extend that, and they, see growth in their industry and want to have that capacity to serve customers in the future.
Quick question, are they, by allowing it within their right-of-way, aren't they giving up capacity there?
Not so much, because they're really, the shared corridor concept that was showed, and Grady showed the Jonesboro, but there's we could have spent all day showing different areas along the railroad. They still have capacity to extend. They're pushing us out so far that they're reserving, their corridor for potential future expansion.
So when you mentioned that they only have one track, they're
Yeah.
still leaving themselves room without getting into that 26 feet to put another track through
Yeah,
there?
generally speaking, I think that one point is, we're at a concept level with developing this. We haven't, we didn't get them to approve what it would look like, how it would work. So we know that, if we went down the road of a shared corridor, that they would be constantly pushing us so that they would maintain the real estate so that they could upgrade their tracks in the future to a second track.
And one quick question, in dealing with the railroad over the past, and we had a depot indicator that they were willing to give us, but we had to move it 15 feet further away from the railroad, which cost us $300,000. So I'm telling you that it's hard, as Jim Durrett. But my question is, and I know the railroads work off federal government congressional approval. Every now and then they have to have this, their right to do whatever the hell they want approved by Congress, is there a avenue by which we could somehow approach the government about making them do this?
I think there's an avenue to approach, elected officials to help us navigate this. I don't know that they're private. They are a private company. They have shareholders. They're an entity aimed at making profit. I would be surprised if the federal government was going to come in and force them to do something. I think a good example of how it worked is Virginia, and I believe it was CSX. The state of, or the Commonwealth of Virginia just made a huge investment. They recognized that in the future they needed more access into Washington, D.C., and they cut a multi-billion-dollar agreement with CSX to get access to their tracks. And so, what we're doing is we're taking a little slice of their overall network and saying, can we have access to that slice of it? I think the examples of areas where transit agencies or states have worked well with freight railroads is there's a significant investment largely by the state. Many times you're improving the network elsewhere, you're investing in a parallel corridor, you're making an area where switches are a constraint to their network. They're always thinking about their network, right? They're in the business of moving freight over a network. And we're creating, just this simple project would just create a pinch point to their network that they see as a risk.
Ms. Hardy?
This is just a comment to add to that, but we were just met with some of our senators in Washington a couple weeks ago, and when they brought this up, the emphasis, at least on rail in Georgia right now, is trying to accommodate the port and some of the issues that we have at the port where there's not enough trucks to get the supplies out, and I think we've all probably felt that. Now, I have no idea if that in any way is part of that Clayton County rail, because I don't know railways well, but I do know they did say that was an emphasis.
It's absolutely part of that network that, serves the port.
Any other questions, Mr. Smith? If not, we will end this item, and are there any other matters to come before this committee? Oh,
Mr.
Bill.
Chair,
Oh, excuse me.
thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you, Mr. Parker.
Sorry.
Next slide, please. I'll try to get through the rest of these fairly quickly. Next slide. So we've taken the time to really spend some time down in Clayton County with all the various different stakeholders. And we started with the county commissioners. We've met with most of the mayors. We had an opportunity to talk with the state delegation in Clayton, and this slide kind of captures some of the themes and things that we've heard. The first bullet there about reaction to the commuter rail update, the similar update we gave to them, issues with they really understood. I mean, they weren't surprised. I think that was a big key takeaway, that they weren't surprised that the railroad was playing hardball. They wanted to understand why commuter rail was suggested back in 2014, and I mentioned early on in the presentation about leveraging what the state had done as a part of taking advantage of. There was even federal funds allocated to this corridor back in the day, and so that was some of the thinking around why commuter rail was included. They were really shocked at the cost. When I showed them the impacts, the cost, snowballing from $400 million to over $2 billion, that was definitely a shock to them. They were ready to move forward with a solution that works, and also wanted to make clear to us that delivering this message to the public was something that MARTA needed to take the lead on. It's going to be a tough path forward, and they understood that, offered in some cases some support, but clearly this message needs to be delivered to the public. Reactions to bus rapid transit as an alternative was good. There was this perception of BRT being second class or bus to rail kind of perception. we spent some time kind of clarifying that what we want to do is deliver a bus rapid transit project that's best in class, that truly emulates rail service, and that's future-proof, that tees up opportunities for taking advantage of autonomous buses, electric buses, and all the opportunity that's being teed up in Washington right now around that. A key piece to that was actually taking folks to see and touch and feel a bus rapid transit system best in class. So that's something that the agency will be working on. But one of the last bullet on here was about BRT to achieve the transit mobility and economic development and placemaking benefits. I talked about the commuter rail system operating during peak hour only. When you look at the socioeconomics and demographics of Clayton County, it is the youngest county, but it's also a county where folks are building their careers, they're building their wealth, and they need opportunity, they need mobility and access to opportunities, be it Clayton State, be it service-oriented jobs at the airport, be it, they need frequent all-day service. And so bus rapid transit along State Route 54 is an opportunity to serve that mobility need. So next slide. So major next steps, we'll be working with the agency and Clayton County to really look at this State Route 54 bus rapid transit alternative as a potential solution. We'll continue to evaluate the commuter rail alternative and its impacts, engage stakeholders, key stakeholders through the end of the year, and then go out to the public after the new year. We'll need to update our funding plan and then bring back to the MARTA board the opportunity to update the locally preferred alternative. That will clearly need to be a board decision. So with that, I'll try to answer any remaining questions, Chairman Pond.
Okay, Jeff?
Yeah, let me just add a couple comments. Grady, appreciate the presentation and the facts as you presented it. I think it's important for me to share and recognize that we're going to have a group of people who are disappointed in in where this is going, and a sense that that an alternative other than rail is a step down, and we need to recognize that. Staff does. We're going to work through those issues. I think what we're presented with is a great opportunity to find I think, this is Jeff's opinion, a better mobility solution. Grady alluded to one of those aspects. The commuter rail had very limited service hours, focused mainly around rush hours, and this will give us an opportunity to provide high level of frequencies throughout the day, and that. And then the other piece of it is that I think that when you're following a rail corridor, you're following a rail corridor. You're constrained to that rail corridor. And there's some real important origins and destinations that we know are important to the county. And a couple, Mountain View, Fort Gillem are top there around economic development. Better access to Clayton State is an important piece of this. And then I think also, potential access to the back end, or not the back end, the international terminal of the airport, are all things that, as Grady has laid out in our next steps, will ultimately be bringing to this board through a public process a locally preferred alternative. And what Manjeet, with the assistance of consultants, is going to do is going to lay out a corridor and try and strongly consider those key areas that I just mentioned, and service hours as well, to really turn this into a project that in hindsight, people see as a great project for mobility and economic development as well. And I think that we need to commit ourselves to, and the board needs to hold staff accountable for, delivering, top, first best of class BRT service along this corridor. We've got to make sure that this is a corridor and a transit investment that can ultimately support economic development. I think there's a great opportunity in front of us.
Any other comments, questions? Can I move on now?
Thank you, Chairman Pond.
Thank you, Grady. Good job. Are there any other matters before this committee?
Chairman, let me make one comment about Grady before he leaves here. And, you know, we're having trouble getting rid of Grady because he's been around for a long time. But quite honestly, they did the DeKalb County Transit Plan several years ago, and they did an incredible job with it. And I wanted to point out that I feel very comfortable with these folks being involved in this decision, and the information that we've seen here this morning is I mean, sometimes it's hard to digest and it's hard to look at, but it is very impressive to see the depth and the contact that you have made with this. From DeKalb County standpoint of what we've been through there, I think it is absolutely essential that the Clayton County board members be up to speed on what this is doing, and I know they will be. I'm not telling them anything, but also this requires a buy-in by the leadership in Clayton County, or it's not going to move forward very easily. That's going to be difficult, and sometimes that's going to be difficult to handle from a realistic standpoint and from a political standpoint. And I understand that, and I want this board to understand that this is not an easy decision to make. It's tough, and it requires a lot of thought and consideration for the people of Clayton County to be involved in. Grady alluded to visiting and seeing what BRT is. That's essential. When we were doing the DeKalb County plan, we all went to Minneapolis and looked at a BRT system. It can change your mind. You can see it, and you can be there, and it can change your mind about what you're getting and what you're looking at and the difference you can make. The last point I will make, and we learned this from Minneapolis, is that once you pinpoint these stations, the value of the real estate around those stations changes overnight. Okay? It's a matter of picking the route, deciding what to do, and then watching those areas potentially develop. And the last comment I'll make is about timing. I mean, BRT can be in place and people can be riding it a lot quicker than they can commuter rail. And that's a big thing, in my opinion. I mean, I don't have that many years left, and I would hope to be able to see some things in DeKalb County done that I don't know whether I'll ever live to see or not. But anyway, people need bus service. They need it everywhere, but they need it in Clayton County, and I think timing is something that has to be considered for that. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Bill. And I think the important
Brady?
piece is the economic development piece as well as the ridership. Roberta?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Grady, for your presentation. Of course, I have heartburn about this, I'm not going to lie. But one of the things that I wanted to ask was, why, if you all knew since 2017, the public didn't know about that? I think that it was disingenuous. I think that we were misled. We've been misled for many, many years. And I think that it's wrong. I mean, even as a board member, the Clayton County board members had no idea.
You know, we've had a lot of discussions with the board, with the county commissioners about the difficulty of this project. You know, it's something that I've talked about candidly with the you know, with the board and with the county commissioners, and will continue to be candid. And
When?
you know, I mean that's my commitment.
Jeff? Candidly was last month.
No, I've been presenting the real issue about all of the access or all of the parcels of land since I became general manager back when, you know, Ben Limmer was the director of planning, and trying to work through and make sure that we exhausted options with the railroad about whether or not the original plan and concept that was laid out way back in 2015 could be delivered by MARTA, and that's the, you know, the shared rail as opposed to the shared corridor.
One other thing, when you talk about speaking with the leadership, you need to understand that that leadership that you're talking to had nothing to do with bringing this to Clayton County. It was we the people. So if you tend to leave us out, if you leave us out, if you consider trying to do a better job with keeping us informed, it will go a long way. Honestly informed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Order. With that, please sign in and register your attendance. I have Ryan Glover's. Yep, that's why it's not working. Ms. Abdul Salam, can you confirm, please? There we go. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the August 26, 2021 Operations and Safety Committee meeting. Can I get a motion and a second to approve those, please?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Hardage.
Second, Pond.
Thank you, Mr. Pond. Please vote. All right. Next on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for bus and rail vehicle consulting services, AE 34733. Mr. Taylor, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Worthy, Vice Chair Abdul Salam, Mr. Parker, Mr. Greenwood, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. May I direct your attention to the agenda item number 2. The requested resolution authorizes the General Manager and CEO or his delegate to amend the current contract to add additional funds and extend the contract term for bus and rail vehicle consulting services, contract number AE 34733 with STV Incorporated, WSP USA, Atkins and SNC, Lavalin Rail and Transit Incorporated, and Hatch and LTK. The additional funding requested is $6 million, and the extension requested is 7 months. Next slide. At the core of today's meeting, we'll discuss why we need additional funds and a time extension added to the contract. Next slide. This contract may be familiar to some and new to others. We received approval from this committee in October 2015 for this contract. This contract allows us to utilize vehicle consultants to assist MARTA with fleet enhancements and sustainability efforts for current and future rolling stock, including rail cars, transit buses, mobility vans, and light rail vehicles and non-revenue vehicles. This contract has a 30% DBE participation and due to expire November 30th, 2021. In May of 2019, we were approved for about $15 million, an increase for this contract by this committee. Next slide, please. Now, this slide is a reminder of the consultants for this contract. We are pleased to report that services and technical expertise provided using these firms has yielded great support to our agency with 38 work orders assigned to them thus far. Next slide, please. Now, these funds and extension will allow us to continue using the current contract for services specified while we solicit a new vehicle consulting services contract with multiple awards for bus and rail modes. Future specs define more updates for mobility van cutaways that mirror our transit buses. We've added specs for our fluid and fuel management systems and maintenance best practices standards for reliability and asset management. Moreover, this contract this extension will allow time to negotiate a separate contract with LTK to provide technical support for our new exciting CQ400 rail cars. Now I'll share a few completed and current tasks by our firms for bus operations. First, they've inspected transit buses and mobility vans during the manufacturing processes from start to completion. Second, when we needed assistance for bus rapid transit support and expertise, they helped MARTA develop BRT concepts of operation plans and bus ergonomic designs. And lastly, they are currently assisting MARTA's bus operations with developing our bus cafeteria-style contract specifications that will allow MARTA to procure any type transit bus or mobility van, no matter the propulsion system, length, and other technical specifications for future bus and paratransit services. Next are some tasks provided or performed by firms for rail operations. First, they've developed and completed rail car maintenance tasks, especially for our new rail car support for CQ400s. Second, they've performed life cycle and reliability enhancements tasks, better known as L-Care. And lastly, our consultants are currently performing fleet life extensions for our CQ311s, these are rail cars that are sent to Kinky Sherrio International in New Jersey. 114 cars are allocated for this project. 66 thus far have been completed. Next slide, please. At this time, I'm requesting that the committee recommend to the full MARTA board this resolution authorizing amendment of the current contract to add additional funds and extend the contract term for bus and rail vehicle consulting services, AE 34733 with STV Incorporated, WSP USA, Atkins and SNC Lavalin Rail and Transit Incorporated, and Hatch and LTK for a $6 million increase and a 7-month extension of the contract term. Next slide. Thank you, Mr. Worthy. I respectfully return the matter to you and the committee for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Do I have a motion to approve this?
I'll move approval.
Thank you, Mr. Durrett. Do I have here a second? Second. Thank you, Ms. Abdul Salam. Any discussion, questions? Mr. Pond.
Got a quick question. Hatch was an acquisition with the existing contract, correct?
Now,
One of
Yes, that is true. I don't know if it was an acquisition or a merger, but LTK and Hatch are now a single firm, and we originally contracted with
the other
LTK.
firm, right. I was just curious, when you have that situation, is any due diligence there, or basically you just move forward? I'm just...
You know, theoretically, we have, under our contract, and I don't know if Jonathan's still, or Liz, I mean, we have to accept the change of the ownership of that contract. So our contract terms, I don't know if Liz, I'm getting that quite right. We ultimately have to approve that. Is that?
Yes, that's correct. We have those terms in our contract if there's any kind of a merger or acquisition.
Okay, I thought so.
Mayor Floyd.
Quick question, 7-month extension, and that extends it to what date? And by that, I'm assuming that by then, we will have received the RFP for the new contract, and so that's enough time then for you to get back to this board with approval on a new contract?
yes, sir. The extension puts us around June of next year. And we have already started the scope of work and putting together specifications for the new contract. So we're well on our way, and we should have that before the board or this committee for approval to get to the board.
And what is the date of that? Do you have an idea about when this committee might see the results of that?
I would anticipate late this year, early next year.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Chairwoman Scott.
That was my question. Why 7 months as opposed to a year or 6 months? How did we arrive at the 7-month? And I think I understand now, based upon your answer to Mayor Floyd. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Floyd, Mayor Floyd.
Either one.
Ms. Abdul Salam.
I was going to ask about the LTK. You said you'll come back and do a contract for LTK. That's not included in the $6 million that we have before us today, is it?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
That's a separate contract.
Any other questions? Any further discussion? Let's call the question. Please vote. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. It passes.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Agenda item 3 is a resolution authorizing an extension and modification to the technical support and spare supply services for the Atlanta Streetcar FC 9839. Mr. Graham, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Before I begin, this is my second time presenting, but first time in the boardroom, so it's very nice seeing you face to face for this presentation. Good morning, Chairman Worthy, Vice Chair Abdul Salam, Mr. Parker, Mr. Greenwood, members of the Operations Safety Committee. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 3, requesting a resolution authorizing an extension and modification to the technical support and spare supply services for the Atlanta Streetcar, FC 9839. Next slide, please. So some key points that we'll be talking about today is the current Siemens contract, the scope of work and some of the accomplishments that they've given us these past few years, why we need the one-year contract extension, and also lastly, incorporating a tire replacement modification. Next slide, please. So with the current Siemens contract, it was originally awarded with the City of Atlanta in November of 2017. It was a sole source contract for the amount of $3,367,800.00. The term was originally 5 years until the merge with MARTA. There was no options. So we made the 5th year as a new line item for any types of accidents or vandalism towards the streetcars. That's why it was originally 5 years, but we made that into a separate line item. And lastly, there is no DBE since it did come from the City of Atlanta. Next slide, please. So dealing with the scope of work and some of the accomplishments, first point is with the maintenance kits. Siemens has provided us with maintenance kits for our maintenance intervals, beginning with quarterlies, semi-annuals, annuals, and then like 2 years, 3 years, and so on. And they've been able to provide that every time we've had our inspections. As far as repair kits, during the past 4 years, they have provided repair material for our streetcars. Dealing with engineering support services, we have direct contact with Siemens Engineering Service in Sacramento, and they help with any questions that we may have, and also they've also helped with our vendor that installed the new camera system on our streetcars, Luminator, also known as Apollo. They were able to help with blueprints and, direct them to where to receive power for the new cameras. Dealing with technical support service, we have an on-site technical support manager with Siemens, and he's there to do fact-finding as far as troubleshooting, part identification, and things like that, and for any questions that we may have. Dealing with tire kits, Siemens gave us 4 full tire kits for the Atlanta streetcar, with so that's a total of 48 tires for our streetcars. We'll talk more into that, into the tire modification. And as far as accident investigation reporting, Siemens, they're there to help and provide any material with the Atlanta streetcars whenever there is an accident or incident to safety or MARTA management. Next slide, please. So why do we need this one-year extension? Firstly, we don't want any gaps with the Siemens engineering and technical support services. And we want to have that time to resolicit this contract to either Siemens or to another vendor. And this one-year extension will cost $673,560.00. Next slide, please. As I was saying from the other slide, the tire replacement modification, the scope is 4 car sets of powered and non-powered trucks, also known as bogies and or trucks. The plan is for our maintenance personnel within light rail to disconnect all the non-powered and powered trucks from the car body itself. And then we ship them off to Sacramento, and that's where they will disassemble the trucks. They press off the wheels and press on new wheels. They will rebuild hydraulic circuits and replace the hoses. They will do a complete flush and fill and pressure test with the trucks. And they will also replace all rubber components on the trucks as well. Turnaround time is 8 to 10 weeks. Siemens usually, gives a buffer of 2 weeks, so hopefully We may see streetcars come back within 6 to 8 weeks, so that we're not down the streetcar for that long. And the total amount for this tire replacement is $403,755.00. Next slide, please. Saying all that, I would like the board's approval for the resolution authorizing a 1-year extension and tire replacement modification to the technical support and spare supply services for the Atlanta streetcar. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to any questions. Next slide.
I'll move approval.
Thank you,
The
Mr.
resolution.
Durrett. Thank you, Ms. Abdul Salam. We have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussions? Yes, Mr. Thompson.
Just curious, what's the projected useful life of the vehicle?
Of the vehicle?
Yeah.
The whole vehicle? 30 years.
30 years? Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mayor Floyd?
is this money still coming out of the half cent from Atlanta?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Durrett? That answered your question. Mr. Pond?
Yes.
Any other questions? Let's go ahead and vote. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Graham.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of police computer-aided dispatch and records management system, RFP P466669. Chief Cryer.
Good morning, Chairman Worthy, Vice Chairman Abdul Salam, Mr. Parker, Mr. Greenwood, members of the Operations and Safety Committee. I'm Scott Crayer, your Chief of Police for the MARTA Police Department, and I'm here to introduce a request for approval of a contract for the MARTA Police Department's computer-aided dispatch and records management system. That's contract P466669. Just for everybody's information, a CAD, or computer-aided dispatch, is how we receive our 911 calls through our dispatch center, and how we distribute those calls to our officers, and how we receive information back and forth from the field, so we make sure we have a complete record of what's going on in our system. The records management system is mostly for our detectives and for keeping track of all our reports that we take, making sure that those are accurate and reported to the appropriate stakeholders, whether those are federal or state stakeholders, to stay in compliance with those requirements. Next slide, please. Our current system is PAMET. It's 25-plus years old. The system has gone through many buyouts over the years. It's due to sunset at the end of this year. The current vendor, Securus Technologies, is in current discussions now to extending that about 6 months so we can get through this vendor approval. We've had a few upgrades recently with our property and evidence room, and moving over from UCR to NIBRS, which is a new reporting system for our crime. And then, of course, this committee approved this system refresh back in May of 2020. Next slide. Our RFP process started in February of this year. Many, many questions came out from a lot of vendors, so we extended this all the way through May. And after May, the SEC ended up with 4 proposals that we were evaluating, 300-400-page evaluations. So we dwindled that down to 2. They did a virtual presentation for the SEC committee, and then we did, of course, best offer and final offer submittals after that, and then the SEC recommended with an unanimous vote for Tyler Technologies Incorporated. Next slide. So there's many, many benefits. I just wanted to highlight a few for the new CAD and RMS system. Obviously, our mapping and aerial imagery software will be immensely improved over 25 years of service. We're taking about 20 to 25 paper reports that we currently do with wet signatures and we're moving that on to the software in the cloud so that our officers can do these reports in the field and send those electronically to the appropriate supervision so we can have signatures once they are approved by the supervisor without having to hand carry those documents back and forth. We've also got NCIC, GCIC, and CGIS database availability, so our officers that are out in the field will now be able to use a handheld device and run criminal histories, run CGIS checks, wanted checks. Our ride with respect suspensions will be on there, so we can check the status of those individuals once we have the probable cause to make the arrest if needed. We also have updated caller ID systems, so people can text in information through our 911 system, and it makes it a much more streamlined system. Next slide, please. So just to summarize, our current RMS CAD system is at its end of life, over 25 years old. We had 4 vendors, and we selected 2 of those to move forward. After a unanimous vote by the SEC, we ended up with Tyler Technologies, and that's a 4-year contract at $3,062,534. Ms. Nash's team presented a 12% DBE goal, and Tyler met that, I believe, a little over 12 at like 12.4%. So with that, I'm respectfully requesting authorization to enter into this contract P4669 with Tyler Technologies for the MPD CAD and RMS system in the amount of $3,062,534 for 4 years. I'll open it up with any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Do I hear a motion?
This is Hardage. I move to approve.
Hardage moves. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Durrett, thank you. Chief, none of us were here at the time, but just thinking of the timeline, I estimate that this was probably installed in preparation for the '96 Olympics, and we've been holding it together with chicken wire and chewing gum ever since. Is that about right?
I brought Dolores Jacobs to the podium because she is our manager of our police communications center. She's done a fantastic job keeping this system together and making sure that it works every day. So I just wanted to recognize her and let her know how much we appreciate her.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And good morning. But you're absolutely right about the chewing gum hold together.
I got you. All right. Chair Scott.
When the term end of the life, so that would mean the physical equipment would be removed, correct?
No, ma'am, that's just the end of the expected life cycle of the equipment.
So the actual equipment will not be changed out, the system running the equipment would?
Once the vendor is approved by the board, they'll move in and pass the baton. Secures Technology will pass the baton to Tyler if they're approved. And I think we asked for a 6-month extension for Secures to be here, and then we'll move on to Tyler.
So the physical equipment is still alive and well?
Yes, ma'am.
But I do believe this contract will replace all of the computers and the hardware as well as the software, correct?
Definitely hardware and software replacement, yes.
Pardon me?
Definitely hardware and software replacement.
But the physical terminals and all of the other equipment?
It will all be
replaced.
new under this contract.
All will be
Yes.
new? That was my question.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Mayor Floyd?
Mr. Chair, there's a substantial difference in the cost, the prices that you received. I wonder if you might explain a little bit about why there's such a difference there, if you might elaborate on that a little bit.
I think what you see is kind of like when you see Motorola doing something. I think the bigger the company, we had a couple of bigger companies that had more exposure in the country that seemed to have a higher price tag on the same technology and the same advantages that we saw. Tyler is not a small company. It operates in 44 different states. It's headquartered out of Texas. The next vendor that was in the last 2 was Central Square, and they're based out of Florida. And they have a little bit more flair and a little bit more notoriety in the public safety sector. But the SEC really looked at it closely. And after we did the best and final offers, Tyler came in well under the other ones.
So you don't have any concerns about what we're paying for, the ability to perform this? I mean, sometimes when you're doing contracting work and you see this much difference, there's concern about their ability to perform the work and do the work.
So we had an opportunity to do a virtual presentation of the two companies. And I think after I got done with them, I feel pretty comfortable that they're going to produce what they say they do. Obviously, I'll rely on Ms. O'Neill as we move through this, but I think they're going to be stepping up and being a part of the transit agency all over the country.
Thank you.
Chair Scott.
The DBE goal of 12%, since you mentioned that they are alive and well in 44 states, how did we arrive at the 12% goal?
I would rely on Ms. Nash for that.
Thank you.
So for the DBE goal, what we looked at was DBE opportunities that are available out of the DBE, out of Georgia DBE companies, the companies that are on our directory. So primarily, the DBE goal here is not the software at all, it's the hardware. So the DBE company, which is Complete System Integrators, which is a Fayetteville, Georgia company, is providing the hardware that was kind of discussed earlier.
So how did we arrive at the 12%?
At the 12%. So we look at the NACE code, and for this one, it would be hardware, because that was the area that we that was given to us as a possibility for DBE companies. So we looked at the NACE code for hardware companies and doing a mathematical equation, looking at the DBEs in that company in Georgia versus all of the businesses that are in that equipment range in Georgia, we came up with a 12%. It's pretty much how we do all our DBEs. We look at the overall companies that are available within Georgia, and then we look at the DBEs that are available.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Frost.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions. So within this contract, does this also include all the project implementation that's going to be required to move from one system to another, I assume? All the data migration that's going to be required, and the new data that you're going to have to put into this new system because, they don't match up. So
Absolutely.
So all that's a part of this?
We're basically starting from scratch.
Right, that's correct. Right.
Replacing the entire system.
All right, and then also, after all that's happening, they will be servicing it and doing all the training and all those functions. So none of that will be billed separately, this all is in this contract?
All included.
Okay, good, thank you. You used the time well. That's good, thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? Mr. Thompson.
Just building off of that, is there expectation on when the new system would go live?
About a year.
About a year.
Can you keep the old one together for a year?
We sure can. As long as we keep her around.
That's right. You can't go anywhere. Any other questions? All right, let's call the question for the vote. Perfect. Thank you both so much. It passes.
Thank you.
All right, agenda item 5 is a mobility briefing by Mr. Miles Turpin, Director of Mobility and also Green Bay Packers football star fame. and I know you would like to take a moment to introduce him.
Sure, thank you, Chairworthy. A couple of introductions, if I may. Just before we get to Miles, I'm not sure if the board has had or the committee has had the chance to meet our new Deputy Chief of Bus Operations, Mr. Harold Humphrey. Harold started with us on August the 2nd. He's got 36 years of transit experience in different modes of service, 32 years of which were in the private industry, with key focuses on on-time service delivery. Started his career in Jackson, Mississippi as a surveyor and part-time dispatcher. His recent experience is as Vice President of Bus Operations in Dallas for DART. Very involved in various APTA committees, Latinos in Transit, and COMTO, the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials. So welcome, Harold. And reporting to Harold, the gentleman you're about to hear from, is Mr. Miles Turpin. So Miles is our new Director of Mobility. He's been with us since February of this year. 27 years of overall transit experience, public and private sector mix, including paratransit and fixed route, as well as rail customer service experience. He's a former leadership development training facilitator, and as Mr. Worthy pointed out, a former NFL athlete. He attended University of California at Berkeley. He says, "Go Bears," an awful lot. And originally from Northern California. Has been with MARTA, as I said, since 2021, and was most formerly the GM for Keolis Transit, working in Burbank and Los Angeles. So welcome, Miles.
Thank you again for those kind words, Collie. And yes, go Bears, and give them the axe. I'll let you know about that in a little bit. Thank you for my first time presenting to the board, and it's a great opportunity, and I thank you very much for being able to be here. Okay. How's that? Can you hear me now? A little better? So good morning. Good morning, Chairman Worthy. Good morning, Vice Chair Abdul Salam, Mr. Parker, Mr. Greenwood, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. If I could bring your attention to agenda item number 5, which is the mobility briefing, and I want to give you a high level understanding of where MARTA Mobility is currently at this time. Next slide, please. So what we're going to do today is briefly go over your mobility oversight team, and again, the core concepts of what paratransit actually functions under, some KPI performance, and give you some of the things that we are currently doing. As the board is aware, we recently had a transition in this calendar year in May, and I'm going to talk about that as well. And then some particular partnerships and synergy that we do. And then obviously a good team, and all departments has to have a vision and some values, and you'll see that as well. Next slide, please. And speaking of team, that's the team right there, and I will tell you beyond a doubt, I've been on a lot of good teams and a lot of bad teams, but this by far is an exceptional group of individuals. The operations division is led by Ms. Kalisha Davis and Eric Knowles, and then our maintenance department by Jonathan Weaver and Mr. Russ Daniel. And then again, Roosevelt Stripling is for our eligibility certifications, and Delton is, Quarles is for our reservations call center. And then Ms. Cheryl Turner is the one that keeps us all on schedule and on point. An extraordinary group, over 142 years of experience that you see there, and more importantly, we wide range, which is unique, from all modes of transit operations, from rail, paratransit, fixed route, BRT, fleet and facility maintenance, the whole 4 modes of operation. Great team. Next slide. And what that team does for the mobility core foundations that we do for mobility is understanding that these are the key concepts for us and how we support DeKalb County, Clayton, and the metropolitan area, and Fulton counties for MARTA. The travel time plus 30-minute window is key in our reservations, from 7-day to an advanced reservations piece. This group is very key in our Power BI, and that Power BI looks towards our KPI performance metrics, which is key for our customers. And the base of that are the two things that you see at the bottom of those two items, the MAC committee meetings. And if you weren't aware, MAC was created so that the board, this board, could have an understanding and be aware of some of the transportation needs of our seniors and our disability customers. And more importantly, when the MAC committee was created, it brings you the awareness of equity in that transportation needs for future and current customers of our service. And then the town hall meetings themselves, they've been very successful. I believe Vice Chair Abdul Salam can attest to that. Our next town hall meeting will actually be in the beginning of this year, of the next year, coming next year, and we plan on continuing those in the near future. Next slide. With that, it's important. I'd mentioned that we had a recent transition, and in that transition, we had a couple of different things when we went from a sole source provider to a new concept model, which I'll talk about later in my presentation. But as you see here, one of the key things, and we're drilling down on with our performance, is our OTP, which is our on-time performance. And we had a seamless and successful transition. We did have some challenges with our meeting our 90% on-time goal. And I won't go over all of these, but I wanted to give you a picture of some of the things that we're currently overcoming successfully and some of the things that hampered us in meeting that goal consistently. Contractors transition, the workforce challenges as you see there, operational continuity, and then the internal software challenges and changes that occurred during this transition. I would point out, which was unique and really a kind of an old fascinating moment for us, was the contractor synergy piece. We had 4 different companies coming together under one umbrella, and to get them to cohesively work as a team was a challenge that we're undertaking now and really seeing the strides of what that looks like for us. Next slide, please. And going back to our on-time performance, as you can see there, to put it front and center, mobility had some struggles early on, but I'm happy to report that we are seeing strides in meeting that 90% goal on-time performance on a consistent basis. From the graph there, we have some slight improvements, and the improvement is steadily getting to where we ourselves are happy with that consistency performance on our on-time performance. And a lot of that was, again, with our synergy synopsis and some program challenges that we had during the transition. But we're well on our way to meeting that goal moving forward, and we're really excited about that. Next slide. And the way we do that is a new concept. As we all know, technology and innovation is key to MARTA's success and mobility's success. What you see before you is a real-time monitoring of our mobility operations, and that's a critical component of our operations and for our customers, where the team and our prime providers can look at real-time transit day service as it's happening before you. And that's in a transit day for mobility. We are a 24-hour operation, and we monitor those times, those rates, as you see the trips and the late trips extensively, and we are able to shift pretty much on a moment's dime if we see something, an abnormality or anything that's out of whack with our unscheduled trips through this command console program. Next slide. With that, it's given us the ability to enhance our operations oversight. And with those, these are one of the key 3 important figures. There's many others, but these are the ones. Our OTP, obviously, our onboard communication. We have an open mic system on our vehicles, and with those vehicles, we want to make sure that our professionalism and our customer awareness is important with our operators who utilize and drive our vehicles, right? And so that is something that is monitored 365 days, 24 hours a day, and keeping our operators honest. And then as you see there, the reservations piece,
is also good, that when someone is calling in to book a trip to get their service, or even if they've lost an item or whatever the scenario may be, we have to meet that call and making sure that when our folks call us, we're accessible and we answer the phone promptly. Next slide. And what you see here is our trips performed. Now, as we all know, with the bar that you see in blue is during the pandemic when it started, and we're still continually in it. The important thing I don't want you to visualize with the orange bar as we're rolling out is our trips have substantially increased going into the end of this year. And I point out to you is that last bar you see in the orange for 17,900. That was after 12 days in the first part of September. So when you extrapolate that out, as of today and by the end of this month, we'll be well, and as far as trips performed, close to the 40,000 range of trips being performed in a month. And when you look at that trend, we're moving forward with high capacity trips and customer ridership on the mobility side. And that's putting us, back to pre-pandemic norms, which is a good thing, but it's also a challenge that we have to look forecasting as far as making sure we can meet service. Next slide. And again, the reservations hold time. Our goal, the standard, the goal was 120 seconds. As you can see, we're well below that. We're very proud of that. That's something that will continue. That's 12 seconds, pretty much averaging out 12 seconds within the queue, and we're projected another 12 by December. And we don't see that decreasing at any time. Next slide. So this is FY our ridership, our most important numbers here. And again, the blue bar represents while we're in the pandemic, and we ridership tapered off as we expected. But now you can see we're well above that, which represents the orange bars. And I will say, when I put the slide together in September, we've already reached the 10,000 K mark. We've reached it twice in September of 10,000 customers riding our service 3 times in the month of September. And I had forecasted out that by October, we should be close to pre-pandemic norms with our 12 to 14K range. Again, this is showing that our customers are coming back to MARTA Mobility, and they want to utilize service to get around and get their lives going again. And we have to be prepared for that challenge, which we are. But that's a very important slide for you to see just the differences and where the operation is heading moving forward. Next slide. And this is how we work. Unlike my peers and family with mobility maintenance, the maintenance side, and fixed route operations and rail, mobility is 70% there, as you see, but 100% overall, we're contracted out. We use private operators, Prime Services, to deliver our service, Gresham Transportation, ATS, which is a DB of First Transit, and Transdev. And that is a unique system with mobility that presents some challenges that we deal with daily with 4 separate independent companies. But the key thing is that with the team we have in place, we have 100% oversight and accountability and understanding with the standards that we expect and are needed for MARTA and our constituents. Next slide. For this year, calendar year, these are some of the accomplishments that we have already done in MARTA Mobility. The key thing I would focus out to you, which I'll talk about in the next slide as well, is the transition from a single source contractor to what we have now with mobility O&M services for First Transit mobilization took place, centralized dispatching as well
with TransDev, and then the eligibility assessment services with TransDev as well. So we have went from a sole single source provider operationally wise to O&M of First Transit and GTS, and then the centralized dispatching aspect with TransDev. And that was a heavy lift in itself in a very aggressive time frame, but it was completed successfully. And we're continuing to, right now, to enhance that even further as we go into the year into next year. Next slide. And there it is more on that, what I was talking about as far as our new operations design model. What it has done is some good, real things I'm really excited about and happy about, giving us a flexible functionality and management, right, with our providers. And a couple points I'll hit for you is the threefold model provides the ability to combine resources. Prior to, when we just had the prior contractor, when you just had a single source operation, when things went wrong or trips were canceled or you didn't have enough folks, you were pretty much stuck with what you had. Here, I have options, and I've done options already with one of our providers to right-size them to meet our goal, and moved resources around to the larger contractor, which is a great opportunity and something that we have in our hip pocket. The other thing, which unknown aspect of it, was an aspect of high performance. As you can imagine, we've implemented some new programs with this concept, and what it has done is created an atmosphere of competitiveness, right? We compete amongst ourselves, but the primes compete against one another. So if you can imagine with our daily, what we call our midday report, your performance is on the line daily, right? Coming from the NFL background, I understood that the eye in the sky doesn't lie, right? And so you're going to see if Miles made the tackle or not daily on a Sunday. Here is the same concept. When we go over our numbers, 11:30 every day, your past performance is what you've done for us lately. And so our primes understand that, and they use that as leverage for themselves to get better. And then the last point there is just it's created a greater level of communication, which is outstanding again, because we're able to, with that communication enhancement, we're able to move and create trips or add special events. The one thing I'm really excited about because of this, we are now able to assist in vertical transportation, meaning our elevators and escalators now. Prior to me arriving, mobility was never able to do that just based on resources and a lack of communication. Now we're supporting all our family members, all our modes with rail, vertical transportation, and of course fixed route. Next slide. I wanted to show you something that's on the rise, that's new, that's going to be coming here real soon for our mobility patrons. Something I'm extremely excited about. We're close. We're about a third of the way through with this, and it's a Where's My Bus app. As you can see, it's where our customers can actually see their vehicles real time, schedule their today and future trips, passenger notifications via the app, text, email, and or IVR. It gives them the ability to make sure when they see the driver, they can see the driver's name, bus number, all of that. We have it currently in a test environment. And what I like most about it really is that last bullet point, the caregiver can monitor progress throughout the ride. And so as you guys know, a lot of our folks go to dialysis centers, cancer treatments, things of that nature, and the caregiver themselves can actually see when their patient is coming. So they're real-time trip identifiers, and that's going to be coming here shortly. I'm anticipating towards the end of the year when we'll go live with this. Next slide. And there's our vision, right? I think a good team, we always want to have goal and role clarity, but at the end of the day, we always got to ask ourselves, why am I here? What am I here for? Where are we going, right? And how's my performance? And for the MARTA team, for the mobility team, fostering individual independence and helping to make the future more accessible for everyone, that's our goal. And we work hard at it. You will never outwork us. And we owe that, and we understand our mission for the customers that we serve. We are intensely laser focused on that, and it's something that's passionate to me because my mother was used a mobility service. She had to use mobility to go to get her dialysis treatments, and so every member of our team understands that, and it is unyielding, undying for us to meet that on a daily basis for the people that we serve. It's about servant leadership, and it's 100% in our resume. And next slide. And that is our mascot. So we're at 1040 Brady Avenue. That's Brady, and I can assure you, when I say we're laser focused, Brady keeps us laser focused. And it's important that you understand how important this is and the opportunities that we have to achieve for MARTA. And as long as I'm here at the helm, we're going to reach our goals. I promise you that. Next slide. And Mr. Chairman, I return the floor to you for any questions that you may have.
Mr. Turpin, thank you so much, and I just want to welcome you officially at I think this is your first in-person meeting, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, welcome, and thank you for the improvements that you're already making. I remember I've been on this board for about 5 years now, and the improvement that has happened under mobility has been tangible and very important, so thank you very much. I'm a little mad that Brady didn't join you for your presentation, but I understand. Do we have any questions for Mr. Turpin? Chair Scott.
First of all, I'm excited, especially to think about the community that's aging. And I'm excited about the mobility app. Is it possible that somewhere, somehow, we can put together a tutorial for those that are aging, such as your mother, or that they would have the ability to understand the app, even if we do something via Zoom or something like that? Is there a plan for that?
Yes. So we're like I said, we're in the third of the way through. We have to create a test environment first, and without getting into the details of the mapping and the polygons have to match up to what we currently do with our GPS system and in alignment, right? Because we work 3/4 mile off of a transit center or a bus route, right? And so we're almost through with that. And then when we kick it out, what you just stated, that's going to happen. And we want to make sure that we want to reach all our folks to understand how to use the app. And what I'm trying to research right now also is, remember, not everybody has a cell phone, right? Mm-hmm. And so I got some research and some things that we're looking at. How do I reach to those customers that don't have a cell phone, but be able to utilize this service as best they know how, right? So there's going to be a reservations piece attached to it as well. But we're trying to find all kind of, logger jams or things that we can give the best service provided. And then once we do that, I think we'll push that out. I also plan on when we have our because we're looking at towards the end of the year to really get it, initial push. Then we're going to have a town hall meeting. So that'll be one of the topics that, again, we want to get everyone aware of. So you're exactly right. We're working in development with that, and we want to make sure that we get as many folks as we can to understand that process and how it works.
Mr. Turpin, do you have another question?
No.
I agree with you completely. I think the app is a very exciting thing. I think that the app is something that, Uber and Lyft have given us all a sense of security, because you know where your car is, you know where it's coming, you know what time you're going to be there. And I love the fact that we're rolling this out, mobility. And I don't mean to volunteer Ms. Hardage, but you have two of us that work for the two of the four large hospitals in Atlanta on the board, and I think we should also reach out and get this information out to hospitals, because as you talk about cancer treatment and other folks going to Grady or Northside or Piedmont or Emory to receive services, I think what you're saying is you can, the nurse or the chemo tech can pull it up and see where their patient is, and we just need to make sure that that's pushed out to the healthcare providers too, because I think that's a huge improvement and a huge deal.
And also, personally, having participated over the past year in numerous federal town hall meetings with our newly elected senators and our congresswomen and congressmen, what I've heard from seniors throughout those meetings is when they were attempting to go online or access COVID shots, the inability to understand and having to have their grandchildren come over and help them and those type of things. So we even put in place with certain congressional districts on how to help seniors. So I think it would be really great if we had tutorials in place, even if we work with senior citizen centers or whatever we need to do to make sure that those that are aging have access to the ability to utilize the app. So.
Yes, and you're both right, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Scott, that's all in the plan and the workings. And what we've also done is we've reached out and to have some networking opportunities. Obviously, I've been in touch through APTA, but then locally, Scottish Rite, the Children's Center, Children's Hospital, some hospitals we've already reached out to, because again, our goal, we were thinking holistically, because we want to involve all and everyone that we can, and then the senior centers as well, where the plan is to go to those senior centers and set up actual, mini town halls meetings to go over what that app looks like. So we're going to look at under every stone, everything uncovered, so that when it really takes off, it'll be supported properly and have the folks available to use it properly as well. And we want to give that front piece part of it, support before we actually go full center with it.
Ms. Abdul-Salam?
Thank you. One of the things that I wanted to say was welcome. It's good to see you in person. You do exist. You do exist. Excellent presentation. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about was when people are trying to make reservations now, they still need to call in. Do they have the ability to do those online yet? We're working through that soon, and we have to work with our IT folks on the accessibility of it, and at the same time, remember with our trapeze program, when they want to make their appointments online, the hardest part sometimes that we've saw is some folks they make a mistake or mistype a word or an address thing, and we on the back end of that, we're not aware of it. So when we push it in our system, say, a street or an address, they might always know as an avenue or whatever, and when we look that up, it's not there, right? So then we have to call folks back and things. So we're looking at some technology pieces to prompt our folks, when I put in an address, the whole list of, say, addresses on Brady will pop up, and then they can just type in the number. So, yes, that's an item as well that we're currently looking at as well. And you mentioned the town hall meetings. I kind of am the appointed liaison between the board and the MAC committee, and I'm just wondering, or not wondering, I'm amazed at the feedback and the comments that I've received since the town hall meeting. During the town hall meeting, you heard it yourself. Yes. But I've had several calls since then too, and they're not complaints. That's a good thing. Well, no, and thank you. As I was in transition on the town hall and pulling over somewhere in Arizona, and got to a Hyatt, and it was a great opportunity. But my wife and Brady, Mr. Chair, were like, "Where is he? can we get going to Atlanta, please? Where I was driving from California, but you're right. It is a great and a more wealth of experience to keep our finger on the pulse. We had a huge turnout virtually. Yes, we did. So I know you're proud of that, and then more importantly, when we start the one next year, early next year, I just see it even getting bigger because of a lot of the accomplishments and the technology pieces we're attaching. So I'm looking forward to it with your leadership and your support, and just helping us, reach out to the folks as much as we can. Are you going to present this to the MAC committee?
Yes, I can do that for you. I will.
Mr. Durrett?
I just wanted to clap my hands and say, break. Thank you for your enthusiasm and your support of your team.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the kind words.
Any other questions?
Well, Mr. Chairman, one quick comment from somebody that came to this board who hardly knew what MARTA mobility was, much less it's become apparent to me that this is one of the most important things that MARTA does. And because the people that need this service, that use this service, are essential to our community. And I think what the job that you've been asked to do here is incredibly important to MARTA. And I've become aware of this through several different reasons. But one is the counties that MARTA does not serve don't have this level of service available to them. And their people suffer because of it. And I can tell you that there's a big difference between what people anticipate here and what they anticipate in other places where this does not provide. So from my perspective as a board member, I give you my 100% support for what you're trying to do here, because I understand that the people that need this, and when I say I understand, you know where I'm coming from. I haven't always needed this service or wanted this service or knew what it was, and I'm beginning to realize the absolute essential service to this community and the improvements that are needed in this community. So anyway, thank you, welcome. And I think I saw you play Monday night, didn't I?
No.
Okay.
No, that wasn't me. I wish, but two old knees, man. I would say merit to you is this, and Collie knows this as well. We're not perfect, but the one thing that sets us apart from all the transit agencies here, in this nation, and the team that we have, and when I say the team, I'm saying rail, bus, my peers, my directors, Mr. Parker, Mr. Greenwood, is the areas that I've been at and the transit agencies, when things and challenges hit them, they throw their hands up in the air sometimes, or they just say, oh, there's nothing we can do, or, well, we'll talk about it. What we do, we have a saying at Mobility, we lean into it. And when I say lean into it, we lean into those challenges. We don't run from them. We address them head on, because we know that if I lean into it, if Mr. Parker leans into it, if Mr. Colley leans into it, right, it's going to make us better. That's the goal. And the overall goal, while I'm here, right, my Super Bowl is to bring that APTA award as the best transit agency in the nation here. And our mobility team will lean into all those challenges. We lean into everything, the successes, and we lean into our customers, as you've stated, so that we make MARTA overall better. And I promise you, as long as there's a breath in me, we're going to get there. So.
Well, thank you again. I think it suffices to say, I think you inspired all of us. Berkeley has a bye this weekend, so I trust you can pull for the dogs over the hogs. Okay. And with that, I think that concludes the Operations and Safety Committee meeting. There is an informational only KPI for July in your packet and for your review. And with that, I'll adjourn this and turn it over to Chairperson.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Can we call this meeting to order? I'd like to call the business management meeting to order. Can my colleagues go ahead and sign in? Okay, is it updated? Okay, thank you. We have enough members. The first item on the agenda is approval of the August 26, 2021 Business Management Committee meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve in second?
I'll move approval.
Approved by Mr. Durden and second by Mr. Pine. Any discussions? I call the question then. Can you vote, please? The meetings have been approved. Thank you. We only have one item on the agenda, and then the other one's a briefing. But the first item is a briefing from MARTA short-term briefing commercial paper and liability facility. Mr. Kevin Hurley, Deputy of Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer, will do a presentation. You have the floor, Mr. Hurley.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair Frierson, members of the Business Management Committee, Mr. Parker and Mr. Srinath. I'm here today to give an update. Due to the timing of this transaction, we're going to bring a resolution to the full board on October the 14th. So I wanted to give you all an update as to where we are in the solicitation of the short-term borrowing product. Next slide, please. Our agenda for today is a little bit of background, the RFP results, recommended selection, and then subsequently next steps. Next slide. By way of background, the finance staff briefed the concept of a short-term borrowing program to the board on August 13th, 2020 and March 11th, 2021 at the board work sessions. The short-term borrowing product will enhance flexibility and efficiency in MARTA's interim borrowing while supporting the execution of the capital improvement program. Staff received approval from the Board of Directors for permission to solicit for a short-term borrowing product on July 15th, 2021. The RFP was released to the public on July 23rd, and responses from prospective vendors were due back to MARTA on August the 18th. Next slide. The RFP results. The RFP solicitation generated 20 responses with various financing structures being proposed. The structures included bank revolving lines of credit, bond anticipation notes, commercial paper liquidity facilities, and commercial paper dealer services. These proposals were also received at senior lien levels as well as subordinate lien levels. Next slide. The structure being recommended by staff is a $300 million commercial paper program sold through a dealer and supported by a third-party liquidity facility. The liquidity facility is from an entity such as a bank, where the bank would agree to purchase the notes in the event of a failed remarketing. The program will be on a subordinate lien basis, which means that MARTA's senior lien debt will be paid first, and then the new commercial paper notes would be paid once all senior lien debt is satisfied. This structure assists in us preserving the credit rating of the senior lien. The commercial paper matures between 1 and 270 days. And at the end of the maturity,
MARTA has the option to do three things. MARTA can remarket the commercial paper for another period of 1 to 270 days. We can pay off the maturing commercial paper using cash, or we could issue long-term bonds to pay off the commercial paper. Next slide. The recommended vendor, staff recommends using the structure proposed by JP Morgan Securities for a 4-year term on a subordinate lien basis. This structure consists of 2 agreements: a revolving credit agreement, which provides the liquidity facility for the Series A commercial paper notes, and a second agreement, a note purchase agreement, which provides MARTA an option to sell Series B notes directly to JP Morgan. This structure provides MARTA with flexibility to issue commercial paper to public investors directly through the dealer, or sell commercial paper notes directly to JP Morgan, depending on market conditions. So this gives us 2 opportunities in 2 different markets to be able to sell our paper to. This structure offers MARTA enhanced flexibility with the 2 options, as well as a timely and efficient method to utilize the capital markets to support our capital improvement program. Next slide, please. The fee for the revolving credit agreement is 24 basis points for any used portion of the facility and 15 basis points for the unused portion of the facility in the first year. For years 2 through 4, the fee will be 24 basis points for the used or unused portions of the facility. Draws on the note purchase agreement directly with JP Morgan or selling the commercial paper notes through a dealer, the rates for those are well below 1% in all-in cost currently. In fact, I checked this morning and we're looking at 0.5 of 1% to 0.6 of 1%, so very low interest rates. For the CP notes remarketing, JP Morgan and Academy Securities have proposed a joint venture where the fee is 4.5 basis points to serve as the dealer for the program. And I wanted to give you a little bit more about Academy Securities. Academy Securities is a disabled veterans enterprise, a federal service disabled veteran-owned small business, as well as a minority business enterprise. Next slide, please. So next steps, staff will be bringing a resolution and substantially complete documentation to the full board for approval on October 14th. With board approval, we've planned a pre-closing on November 17th and final closing on November 18th. Next slide. That concludes my update, and I return the floor to you, Chair Frierson.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. I appreciate it very much. We have any, may I get a vote for the board? Just a briefing. Okay. Questions about the board members? That's right. Mr. Pond?
This is just like if your business a line of credit with a bank, correct?
Yes, or similar, yes.
But if you don't use it, you're paying a very small fee just to have the.
Just have it available, yes,
Right.
sir.
And then when it cranks up, it's basically the market rate, what you sell it for.
It would be the market rate for there's actually 3 components.
Right.
There's the index rate, there's the liquidity facility, and the dealer rate.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. Mr. Floyd?
Those of us simple-minded, it's a $300 million line. If you don't use it at all, what do we pay?
We're paying the 24 basis points.
Yeah, but I need a number. What is that?
We're paying 1/4%, so an annual amount, you're looking at around 400,000, 450,000.
Okay, so we're we're gonna pay $400,000 whether we use this or not. Is
Yes,
that
sir,
correct?
that's correct, yes, sir.
Okay, and then it goes up based on, a little bit on the usage after that.
Okay, thank you. If we do not use it, a small correction. First year, we pay 15 basis points. That's 0.15 of 1%. I believe what Mr. Hurley mentioned was the usage fee, that's 24 basis points. Unused is a lot lower. So if the usage fee, Mr. Hurley mentioned, translates to 400,000, unused would be roughly about 220,000.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, once again, it's an opportunity for us to have some short-term commercial paper. I mean, for the basis point, it said 0.5%, it's like free money. So, I mean, it's not bad, but once again, yeah, not quite, but there is a cost to use it, right? Or to not use it. Okay. All right, any other questions from the board members? Okay. All right, hearing none, that's the only item that we have on the agenda. The other item is other matters, which is a FY 2022 July financial highlights and financial performance indicators. That's a part of your packet. Please take the opportunity to view that. Mr. Durrett, have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Kevin where he played football.
I was a frustrated 5'10" basketball player.
Okay. All right, any other information that we need to bring before this board? Hearing none, I call the meeting to adjourn. Thank you.